from the heart of Dubai. This is Sports Unhinged with Mohamed.
And we are on. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports Unhinged. My name is Mohamed. And however you might be listening to us today on SoundCloud, iTunes, your Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Facebook, or YouTube, we are glad that you can be here with us. A fantastic and very packed show we have for you today. Last episode was an NFL special. It was an 80-minute NFL special, and the feedback that we got from you guys has been absolutely phenomenal. Definitely the most listened to podcast that we've had so far of all the episodes since we got started. So this is fantastic. But today, like I promised, we're going to go back to a bit more of a mixed show. We're going to talk about some football and a little bit of UFC. And since last week, getting a guest on the show worked out really well. I have another partner in crime with me today, Tariq Baraka. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Looking forward to the show.
Tariq is a very good friend of mine. Known him for what now, 8 years?
Probably around that time. Yeah, maybe a bit longer.
And I would say maybe 90% of the conversations that we have are sports related.
Yeah, exactly.
So this should be very easy to do, very seamless.
Yeah.
Let's start with the football. It's been a very interesting transfer window. I've spent a lot of time in previous episodes complaining about how money is ruining football, and it definitely got to a climax on closing day or the deadline day of the transfer window. But I think the climax or the stories that came out were mainly around the players that didn't move rather than the players that moved, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple of big names in the Premier League, at least, that didn't exactly have their say this time around.
Yep.
But I guess there's still hope for the January transfer.
See, this is one thing I said last time, and I don't get it. How can a player that's under contract demand to move and refuse to play? They don't have the leverage. At the time, when you're a free agent, you can choose which club to go to. But at this time, when you've just signed the renewal a year ago, I think Coutinho signed a year ago, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And he was very happy and thanked the fans for all the support that they give him and that he looks forward to staying with the club for years to come. But then obviously when maybe a bigger club in his eyes comes calling, then he just starts drooling at the opportunity.
I don't get that. Fine, you can tell the team that you want to move. Maybe you have good value, but if they say no or they don't get the right offer at the time, you go back and you play. You're happy.
Yeah.
You don't hold out. Like the whole Diego Costa thing. I just don't get it.
But that's the thing. You need to keep in mind that there are thousands of players out there. So when just a couple of them kind of throw a hissy fit every season, it's not really, percentage-wise, it's not really a big deal. It's just that because, the news and the media, they just love these stories where
they sensationalize it, right?
Exactly, yeah. So they just get people to get stuck on them. I do believe that Coutinho and Sanchez are gonna still perform well because they still do want these transfers to happen.
Right.
So I don't think that they're just gonna, just kind of lay there and play dead until
because it doesn't serve them. If they want to move, they want to be, they want to have the highest salaries. They want to be at the top of their value. If they lose that value by not performing well, they're actually hurting themselves. So it's in their best interest to go out and play to their full potential.
Definitely. I heard that Sanchez refused the £300,000 per week offer from Arsenal. That was the latest improved offer. So I think he is pretty adamant about moving on. And especially, we know that an Arsenal became sort of a feeder club to Man City.
Right.
So he sees the trend and he doesn't mind it.
Just like Southampton is to Liverpool, right?
Exactly. There are a lot of, just like Man United seniors to Everton.
Right.
They have a lot of these kind of partnerships.
Actually, speaking of transfers, Oxlade-Chamberlain moving to Liverpool.
Yeah.
So one of the jokes that I heard is that he just took the long route from Southampton to Liverpool. It took about 7 years.
Took a detour, yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get into it. So this whole Coutinho thing, first few games of the season, Liverpool had so much power up front that people were like, maybe Coutinho doesn't have a place in that team or they won't miss him after all. But last weekend, we saw that they kind of struggled. What do you think of this whole Coutinho saga that's going on?
I do believe that every team sort of needs that key player in the middle that moves the ball around,
right,
especially going forward in attack. you see teams like Leicester shining when they have someone like Kante in the middle controlling the defensive part of the pitch. But then other teams like Liverpool, where they don't mind conceding goals, to put it nicely, they do need someone in attack to kind of open up the play and then free up some of the players.
But then Kante kind of gave it back to Leicester this weekend as well, when he played obviously Chelsea and he scored against his old club. So it was quite. I mean, it must be conflicting for a player like that.
I mean, they brought him to the limelight, so I'm sure he has some mixed emotions.
Yeah.
So basically, I think what Liverpool lacked in Coutinho, they kind of made up for in Salah, because they're able to open up play on either wing now.
Right.
So they're not destined to only kind of rely on Mane's runs. So I think if they will keep playing wide, especially also the Moreno also kind of is playing better than he did in previous seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think if they do rely on playing on the like open kind of, not through the middle, not narrow-minded offensive, then I think they can do something. But definitely someone like Coutinho is just going to offer value and more options and more depth. Yeah. So I do believe that he will perform coming, the next few games. We saw him for Brazil and their first game
looked really good. He scored the goal as well, right?
Yeah, and he was a bit emotional about it. So I do feel that, I do feel for him when maybe his dream club is Barcelona come knocking and he's unable to go through with the transfer. But still, if they really want him,
be a professional and play your game, right?
They will come back if you're still at the top. So.
Right. How about this whole Alexis thing? The number of photoshopped pictures that I saw online of him in a Man City shirt is just unbelievable. I think at one point he thought that he was a Man City player and then it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Has Man City, have they missed out on him or do they get him in January?
Looking at the transfers that City sort of went through, let's say.
Right.
They're averaging in the 30 and 40 million pound range. So
200 something million on the defense alone.
Exactly. Mendy, Walker, Danilo, and even Ederson. I think that they didn't really need to reinforce up front, which is why they didn't pursue him so hard.
Right.
I believe that if they really did want him and they felt pressured that they needed solutions up front, they would. But look at City. They have De Bruyne, they have Silva. They even had Jesus Navas, who they offloaded. They had Nolito, who they offloaded. And then they got Jesus, who's performing really exceptionally well.
I've never seen someone acclimate to the Premier League so quickly like
exactly.
Jesus.
Ederson and Jesus, I think, are going to be the first season wonders, let's say,
Yeah.
So I don't think that City really needed Alexis, which is the reason why the transfer didn't go through, because we know that Arsenal, as proven historically, are a selling club. They wouldn't mind if someone comes and splashes the cash. They wouldn't mind selling the guy. So, and the fact that he rejected their latest offer to extend his contract, that kind of should sway them to selling him in the near future if he doesn't perform that well.
Well, I think for Manchester City, most of the transfers were high in value. Like the 50 million for Kyle Walker was, I don't know, I can't explain it. Just because you put, an Armani price tag on, I guess, handbag, it doesn't mean that it's an Armani handbag.
Yeah.
So, but I think right now that City have all the pieces, so it's going to go down to the coaching now. Now we're going to find out how good Pep Guardiola really is, because now all he has to do is upskill the pieces that he's acquired to the next level. Because if you look someone like Stones, I don't know if he's worth that 50 million as well. I think that they paid for him. Yeah. So what's happening right now is, and I think Monaco is probably the best example for this, is players are being sold for premium money when they're not the finished articles. In the past, when you get these kind of record-breaking fees, it's for a Zidane, it's for a Beckham, it's for people that are finished articles. Maybe they just need to work on one thing or two, but they're pretty much there. Now we're getting teenagers that still haven't found out what experience in football is, and they're being sold for record-breaking fees.
Yeah, I agree. But I feel also that the quality of the players in the past was, in a sense, close to each other.
Yeah.
That's why the Zidanes and the Ronaldos and these kind of players usually would outshine.
They would be in a different class altogether.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the moment you have the youngsters kind of doing that. So when you have you're definitely buying potential. You're not buying a finished product.
Right.
And I think in City's case specifically, what they did was more of a rejuvenation than just buying better players. Because if you look at their backline, they had
that's where the issues were.
They had Zabaleta, they had Clichy. An
aging defensive line.
Exactly. Even Company, I mean, he was getting constantly injured. I mean, he's still there, but he's more of a leader role than
a spiritual leader, you know. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So if you look at the names that they got, these are usually like 25, 23-year-olds that sort of have the potential to become world-class players. So I think it's more of a gamble. It's just like getting Pep Guardiola to coach the team as well.
Right.
I mean, City were never the offensive mentality kind of club. They just kind of played their own kind of style of football. But now with the way that they're buying these players, these youngsters, you know, even when they got Raheem Sterling from Liverpool, I mean, everyone was shocked that someone like Sterling could go for such an obscene amount of money.
Right.
And yet the guy has actually performed, sensibly speaking. I mean,
but
he hasn't really...
Not to justify the amount that he went for. I think it was somewhere around 40, 50 million as well, if not more. No, 63 million.
Yeah, I think it's between 60 or 70. Yeah. But the idea is, yes, they did overpay. But if you have the money, why wouldn't you overpay? It's just like when you have a budget for a car, you know?
Right.
You can purchase a car for 100 or 200 and it doesn't really make much difference to you. So I wouldn't go for the 200
if you have
option.
the money.
Yeah. And it performs well enough. I mean, if it underperforms, then it's going to be scrutinized and everyone is going to say you're just raising the bar for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
But then look at the players offensively, at least for City, the past couple of years. They've had Aguero, they've had Sterling, they've had De Bruyne. They've had a few youngsters, let's say, who have actually performed well enough. Yes, maybe they haven't won the league. Maybe they haven't really went far in the Champions League.
Right.
But then it's a whole build-up, which is what Guardiola is supposedly doing.
Well, you might have heard the previous podcast where I did my predictions.
Yeah.
Because of the whole money thing and maybe how emotional I was about it, I predicted that City will finish 5th.
Yeah.
Didn't look anything like that yesterday. It made me look a bit stupid, but I'm still going to hold on to it. You know, I'm going to keep Arsenal at 4th. I'm going to put City at 5th and just hope it falls apart, because I think we find out how this chemistry in that team works once the Champions League starts, once those fixtures become twice, 3 times a week, you know, like when it gets a bit hectic with the training sessions and all of that, then we really find out with the rotation policy that Guardiola would have, how well they will do. We saw Drinkwater move to Chelsea.
Yeah, that was a strange one.
It's even more strange because they were talking about how the whole reason behind getting Drinkwater is to replace the gap that Matic left behind. Yet they gave Matic to a rival, made them a lot better. In my opinion, it was the missing piece from last season and the reason why they got so many draws. Matic is holding his own. Fellaini, who I criticized heavily last year, is coming on and playing a specific role that is actually working out fantastically this year.
Super sub.
Yeah, he's a super sub. You want him in the penalty area, you know, creating an aerial threat, he'll do that. You want him in the defensive midfield, he's doing that. So I don't understand what Chelsea's doing. And they tend to do that. They tend to sell players to rivals and making them stronger.
We know Conte as a coach and his preference to a 3-5-2 style.
Yes.
So him getting Conte last season was, let's say, the major reason why they were able to hold on and win the league at the end of the season. So
he was an integral part for that run.
So you had Matic and you had Conte, two very reliable defensive holding midfielders, and any team is jealous of you having this kind of partnership in the middle. And I think I would like to believe that there was a personal issue with Matic, because otherwise, yes, the transfer doesn't make sense, especially for him to go to United. I mean, they were better off offloading him like they did Oscar to China.
Whatever, you know, Serie A, La Liga, anywhere.
I mean, they did get 40 million for him, but I don't think 40 million is such a hefty price for someone like Matic. I mean,
especially now in the age that we live in, 40 million is a bargain, you know?
No, I mean, and especially for a holding midfielder. I mean, we always would remember a Vieira, a Makaleli, you know, like these kind of players will always stick out because they really do control the middle of the pitch.
Pirlo, you can't forget Pirlo,
Pirlo,
the
definitely,
greatest of all
100%.
time in that
Gattuso
position.
even, if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't really understand the Drinkwater deal either, because they also got the Bakayoko from Monaco for 40 million. So in a sense, would you take a Bakayoko over a Matic for the same price?
I don't know. I don't know that I would. I don't know.
Bakayoko, who is what, 1 year, 2 years in Monaco, that he's been playing well, versus Matic, who just won you the league in a sense.
It's that whole Monaco thing. I don't know what.
Yeah,
they're the luckiest team ever to get all that money for the young players that they have.
They did outperform themselves. I mean, there's no denying
for 1 year.
But yeah, exactly.
Can I see more of a sample size? You know?
Yeah, 1 year in the world of football is nothing. I mean, we've seen the rise and fall of teams in several years. So 1 year is really nothing.
Barkley missed out on a move. There was a lot of talk about him moving to either Chelsea or Spurs. Do you think he moves in January?
What I actually heard is that he even passed the medical for Chelsea.
Okay.
And then he went to the Chelsea management or the sporting director who was doing the transfer, and he asked for more time to think.
Okay.
So we know that he has an injury at the moment, so he can't really play.
Okay.
And he seems keen on the transfer, but I think he's just worried that he might move on a World Cup year and not be able to play for Chelsea and thus lose his place in England. So that might be the main reason. So I'm not sure if January is going to happen, or he might hold out till after the World Cup is done. Maybe. And then make that move.
Now, Spurs, it was quite interesting because for most of that transfer window, they were pretty inactive. They almost stood pat until the end. And then we saw some really, really good moves they got there. They've got Davinson Sanchez from Ajax for 42 million. They've got Aurier from PSG, a little bit of a troublemaker. Pochettino even joked around that, if there's any out of the pitch issues, that he'll kill him. Because, in PSG, he had an assault conviction against him. There was some homophobic remarks that he made to Laurent Blanc. There's quite a few things. He's a 23-year-old, but he's a bit of a wild kind of person. I don't know if he's a risk. I think he's worth the risk in terms of getting him. He's a player that Spurs needed to replace Walker, especially, and they got him for half the price. So immediately that makes sense to me when you get 50 million for Walker and you get a replacement for 23. I think Spurs did a very good job right at the end there to pull it together.
Don't they have Danny Rose at right back as well?
Yeah, but I can't remember. There's something with Danny. I don't know if he's injured or he's upset or
he's upset.
He's upset, right?
What happened is that he signed a new deal last season,
right?
An improved contract, but apparently he realizes months later, especially during the summer when he doesn't have much going on, that the money that he's getting is not good enough, and he complains basically about the world of football and how they're underpaid.
Oh wow!
Which doesn't really make sense to the average person working a 9-to-6 job. But so basically he went to social media and he kind of complained about Tottenham specific and just the world of football in general.
When you take it public, I guess you immediately go in the doghouse for that.
So I think I think Tottenham were answering him in this sense by getting Aurier and probably putting him in front of him, and then they ended up the deadline day with the Llorente move.
Llorente, 12 million move,
and then you have the Sigurdsson to Everton, which is definitely a great move for Everton. Besides the other transfers that they were able to embark on this season,
right?
I think that Everton can actually fight for a Champions League spot. I mean, they are an outsider, but I think that they will.
See, so my top 6. For my predictions, I've had Tottenham at 6th. I had City at 5th, which is, again, not looking good by the day. I had Arsenal at 4th. I had Liverpool at 3rd, Chelsea in 2nd, Manchester United 1st. Who do you have for your top 6 out of interest?
I spoke of Everton. I mean, they're not in my top 4. I'm just saying that I think they are able to compete, especially against the top 6 that I have noted down.
See, I don't have them even breaking the top 6. I have them finishing 7th again.
I also have them finishing 7th. But
Okay.
I'm just saying surprises could happen. Yes.
If there is a surprise, it's probably Everton.
Exactly. I have United winning the league because, like you touched on, I think their problem was that they got Pogba,
right?
Previously known as the most expensive player,
right?
Very short-lived title, and
he doesn't have that pressure anymore. He could just say, like, don't refer to me as the most expensive, you know?
I'm just an average player, I guess, at this weird transfer window.
Right. And by the way, for the listeners, Tara is an avid Manchester United fan and also a Barcelona fan. He hopped on to both of these bandwagons during very interesting times. I think it was 99, the treble year for Man United.
Yeah, exactly. So I bandwagoned ever since I was a kid.
Yes. So you're perfect there. You're not those. Yeah, it's the Man City fans that I'm seeing right now that used to be Chelsea fans before that. That used to be United fans before that, or Liverpool fans. So if you're a kid when you jumped on that bandwagon, because when I was a kid and that treble happened, I almost started supporting Manchester United. But the only thing is, I think in the semi-final of that year, they beat Juventus, which is a team that I actually support. So I was too upset at them to...
No, but the comeback at the last 3 minutes to score a couple of goals. Sheringham and Solskjaer, it was something to reminisce about.
It stays with you.
Ever since.
It stays with you.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got Man United winning the league.
Yeah, so I believe the Matic buy was the perfect solution to the problems that they had. Besides that, I think their other issue was the finishing.
Yes.
I mean, we all know that they had a million draws last season. So I think that they needed a quality finisher, and they definitely have that in Lukaku. I mean, I think he scored 5 and 4. So,
he's looking really good this year.
So that's a great stat, and then for second, I actually disagree with you about Man City. I think that they have a very solid team. Yes, maybe they're not the perfect end product as yet, but I do believe that they have a good enough team to compete at least for the title. I don't think they're going to win it.
Right.
I think it's more between United and Chelsea, but I think that City are going to edge.
Tell me something. You're a Barcelona fan. Obviously, at the time, Pep Guardiola was the coach. One thing that I've said is that I'm not sure if Pep Guardiola is a world-class coach or not, because he just spent insane amounts of money everywhere he went. And I haven't seen what he would do.
You can argue the same about Mourinho, though.
You can. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You can. So what do you think of Pep Guardiola? So when people ask me, is he a great coach or is he just a coach that spent a lot of money? I say, I don't know. I'm so undecided about this. I couldn't go one way or the other.
He's a great coach. He's really good, but in a very specific style of play. I mean, he's not a Mourinho in that sense.
Right.
He can adjust to the... I mean, he does have these little tweaks and twitches throughout the game where he can make a couple of lethal subs or put on a guy who then gets the name of a super sub like Ferguson used to do. But at the end of the day, I think that his style of football kind of puts him in a very weird position where he needs to have very specific kinds of players to be able to perform well enough.
I felt last year that he was trying to teach those kids something that they simply couldn't understand.
I think so too. I think they need more time, but in today's world, I mean, you do not have time.
It's like in the NBA, Phil Jackson with the triangle, that used to work back in the day with Kobe and Shaq and Jordan and all of that. And now he tried to do it with the New York Knicks, and they just don't get it. It's like, it's something that probably doesn't work in today's football. Now, it's not that extreme with Guardiola, but like you said, he probably needs certain football IQ to be there in his players to get his style.
I mean, you don't really need smart players. You just need players who can actually execute. You don't need a traditional form of high IQ,
right?
But instead, just a footballing IQ where the coach barks his orders and you're actually able to follow them to the T. By standards of great coaches, he did fail at Bayern. There's no denying that. I mean, he had a great team at Bayern.
He underachieved there.
And by their standards, getting the league and the cup is not really a huge feat. Yeah. So he did fail in the Champions League. And I think a club like Bayern has a bit of a upper management problem. which I believe that the upper management usually controls the team more often than the coach would.
Yeah.
So I think that he felt that power struggle and he decided that if he's going to move to a club, he's going to have sort of a full ownership over the team.
Right.
Which I think Man City are desperate enough that they would give him that.
He's almost spent $500 million. Or I think he's exceeded that by now. Yeah.
I think that is the biggest indicator that the upper management are just telling him, here's a blank check, just do whatever you need.
Antonio Conte must be looking at him like, that's exactly what I want here, guys. Come on.
Exactly.
Oil money here, oil money there. Just give me what I want, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
I guess the Russians are not as easy to convince.
Yeah, being stingy after 5, 6, 7 years with Abra, I don't think it's a big problem. So I have United first, City second, Chelsea third, and then Tottenham at 4.
Okay.
The new Arsenal.
So you have Liverpool missing the top 4.
Yes, I think Liverpool are doing well. I don't know if Coutinho is going to come back and sort of fill the same shoes that he did last season.
Reintegrate himself.
Exactly.
You know?
But I think they still have a defensive problem. I don't think they solved their defensive woes. So, I mean, even their goalkeeper, it's a good game and then a bad game and then a good game.
Oh no, I said that Mignolet should be shipped off to a Cambodian team before the close of the transfer window.
Yeah.
He did well yesterday in the thrashing that they got. It could have been 7, 8, 9
at least.
You know,
yes.
I think to give him some credit, he did okay. You know, in the game.
Definitely. I think offloading Sacco and Deadwood Lucas, if you want to nickname him that.
Yeah.
I think that was a good move, but they failed to kind of reinforce in the defense. I mean, getting Salah was one of the best deals in the Premier League. And I think they just needed a solid center back. If they're able to find anyone who is willing to move for under 50 million, then that would have been the move to do.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the whole Barcelona-Real Madrid scenario that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Because Barcelona were after a few players. They couldn't get them. They ended up paying a lot of money for Dembele. Real Madrid seemed to be growing from within rather than going to the market. And it's kind of like they kind of switch policies there. It used to be Barcelona that comes up through the academy, Real Madrid that, you know, go out after the Galacticos. You're a Barcelona supporter. What do you think is going on there? I've heard that there's definitely issues going on at the upper management at the board level.
Yeah, I mean, the new board is just, it's not working out, let's say. Obviously, as a supporter, you're going to have a subjective view on the issue. But just looking at the dealings, it's not a club that is able to lure anyone and any player and kind of force other clubs to sell. That's what PSG sort of did to Barcelona by doing their backroom maneuvers.
Right.
With handing the cash to Neymar to buy his contract out. That was a huge loss for sure, losing Neymar, especially that the whole Barcelona squad was built around MSN. So losing Neymar was a key problem, let's say, which they already had a couple of issues that they needed to address. Ever since Xavi left, no one was able to fill his shoes. They got Arda Turan from Atletico, and
that didn't work.
He underperformed, and then he started getting injured as well. And then they got Rakitic, who is decent, but he's not world class. I mean, he's definitely a good player, a good squad player, but he's not an important first team player. And then they tried to also salvage that by getting Andre Gomez, who also is not capable of filling the Xavi shoes. I mean, it's you're trying to replace Xavi. So.
You know, as a Valencia player, you've taken Andre Gomez from us. You've taken
Jose Alba.
No, Jordi Alba. No, Jordi Alba was a while ago.
David Villa.
No, you took an attacker from us.
David Villa.
More recent, and you're sitting him on the bench. Alcacer, that's the guy.
Yeah. The problem with Barca is that they do not have half a player to replace MSN. That's the issue.
Yeah.
I mean, they have Munir Al-Haddadi, who's a decent youngster. But
did you guys loan him out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another one of those things that doesn't make sense. I mean, he's a youngster at the end of the day, and he has won things with Barca already.
Right.
So I don't think it should be a problem for the management to be able to tell him, you know what, you need to sit on the bench. Yes, you have MSN ahead of you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a small problem to have, you know, like you just need to deal with it. So besides the Andre Gomez move that didn't work out, they also tried to replace Dani Alves, who left.
Yeah. Went to Juventus, had the best year of his life there.
Exactly. You know? And now he's also playing well for PSG. I mean, the first few games, if they're any indicator, he has been performing well as well. So I don't know why you would sell someone who's been at your club for several years and been doing really well and then struggle to replace him, basically. They got a Vidal who didn't work. They're trying to put Sergio Roberto as a right back, and he's more of a Xavi than a right back.
Yeah.
And the problem is that nobody is willing to kind of give him his chance. I mean, whenever he plays in center mid, he always outdoes himself. And I don't think why they just do not rely on him. So now they got Semedo from Benfica.
Yeah.
Who's a good transfer, I believe. And if you watch the game against Espanyol, the derby.
I didn't get a chance to see that. No.
Yeah, 5-0 annihilation. I mean, the first goal was an offside by Messi, who scored a hat-trick. But it's still, I mean, it was a complete domination. And
did they look like the old Barca with Neymar, or just a different Barca that's dominant?
Not really. It's more of a, I mean, maybe 70% of the old Barca. But I mean, they dominated the game. They usually struggle against Espanyol because of a derby, but it was an easy coast 5-0 win. And Semedo looks really promising. Dembele came on as a sub, and he also did well. He assisted Suarez for the fifth goal.
The pressure that must be on that kid.
Yeah, I mean, two professional seasons as a footballer, and then you have 100 million price tag on your head.
Second most expensive of all time. Was he 20, or is he still a teenager? Did he?
No, I think he's 20. I think he started playing for Rennes at 18, and then he was in Dortmund last season.
Has his voice broken yet?
I haven't heard him speak. I just saw him fail at the introduction video.
Yes, with those keepy uppies, you know.
So I think Barcelona's problem is more on the board level.
Yeah.
I mean, they failed to secure Coutinho for an obscene amount of money, which isn't normal thing to do.
Right.
I mean, they must have some...
Do you think that they were basically saying the truth when they said that they bid 200 million for him, or...
100% no. I don't think...
I think Liverpool were claiming that, right? No, Barcelona was claiming that they bid 200.
Barcelona are going to say anything to kind of feed the media a positive spin on the issue, that it's just Liverpool being stubborn. Yeah. I mean, there's when there's will, there's way. So
yeah. Especially with the money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And especially for a club such as Liverpool, not to undermine them, but I mean, we saw them selling Suarez for 80. So why wouldn't they sell Coutinho for double that amount?
Right.
That's a very normal, and I mean, it's illogical, but in the same sense,
in the world we live in now, it makes all the sense, right?
Yeah. When you see someone like Neymar, who's, let's say, the number one prospect in world football at the moment. I mean, yeah, Messi and Ronaldo arguably are better, but in a sense, he's the youngest and the best one in that sense. And he went for 222. So do you really expect Coutinho to go for 200? He's not half the player Neymar is. So
Real Madrid. I mean, interesting that we're seeing the breakout seasons from Asensio, breakout season from Isco. They're looking unbelievable right now. Not so much on the transfer market, though.
I don't think... I think it's mainly Zidane's role in the team.
Right.
I think he's really outdone himself. I mean, it's his brilliance on the ball is what we're seeing now from him as a manager.
Just like he was as a player, right?
I mean, the way that he controlled the game, especially in his last debut for France in the World Cup, despite the Materazzi headbutt thing.
Yeah.
He was just the perfect player throughout the whole tournament, and he carried sort of the French national team. I think it's more of a Zidane thing, and I think it's maybe Ronaldo's role as a spiritual captain, and then the enforcer and Ramos. I mean, they have a very balanced team.
They do.
I don't think they're missing anyone. Maybe they can improve on some positions, like the Benzema position, for example. That's something up to the debate. And the goalkeeper, they were trying to get De Gea from Man United.
Right.
But I don't think their goalkeeper is that bad either.
He's not. He's
so
fit for purpose.
Yeah, I think they gelled really well as a team. They've been playing together for a few seasons. They're just well organized, and they're playing the best kind of style of football with the solid counter-attacking.
How about Karim Benzema? Do you think it's time to consider offloading Karim Benzema?
Definitely. I mean, you had Higuain with the misses for Real.
Right.
And Argentina, as any Argentina fan would know. His role is, I mean, he doesn't really need the speed or the agility. I think he's a false number 9 in a sense, in a team that doesn't really have a striker. They just have a couple of wingers doing the runs from the outside.
But boy, do they have goal scorers everywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Gareth Bale, who also was one of the most expensive players out there, he's underperforming, and yet, I mean, he's still doing okay, generally speaking.
I just don't think there's enough real estate on that pitch for everybody that needs to play on Real Madrid. I think that's the issue there.
Maybe they can, if Ronaldo still has a few good seasons in him, and if the Gareth Bale stops getting injured for a season or two, I think Asensio playing that false 9 will actually work for them. Yeah, I mean, he does have penetrating runs, which would help if he's playing from behind. So I think a false 9 would work for him.
All right, excellent. So I think with that, we'll wrap up the first segment here. When we come back, we're going to cover just a little bit of a preview of what's coming up in the Champions League this week, a couple of the key games. We're going to have a review of the Premier League games from last week, and then maybe move on to a bit of boring international football. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do that. All right, we'll be right back in the next segment.
You're listening to the Sports Unhinged podcast.
Welcome back. This is Sports Unhinged. We're going to cover a little bit of reviews of the Premier League football right now. There was some interesting games, mainly Man City, Liverpool. We had Arsenal, Bournemouth. We had Chelsea versus Leicester. Man United versus Stoke. I think let's start with that. It ended with a 2-2 draw. From what I see, I think it was a fair result for both teams. And you're going to expect it. When they make the jokes about, Messi has won this and Messi has won that, but he's never done it on a cold night in Stoke. There's a reason for that analogy. How do you think that game went?
I think, as you said, it was a fair result for both teams. I mean, United could have kind of clenched the win at one point there, but I think Stoke played well enough to earn the draw. Maybe even win the game, but let's just say 2-2 is a...
You're going to get these games once in a while if you're Man United. As long as you can maintain your place at the top of the league, which I think they've done now on goal difference.
They had a great start anyways, so I mean, it's fine if you dip in form early in the season. It's just that we don't want this to happen towards the end where, every point sort of matters.
Right. Mourinho refusing to shake hands at the end of the game and then walking away when he was asked about that.
But I heard that, I don't want to get into a silly debate about managers' egos, but I think that Hughes sort of pushed him at one point during the game. I saw that somewhere, not actually officially during the game, but I just read somewhere that he did that first. So Mourinho retaliated.
When these tabloid-like stories come out in the NBA or the NFL, it works. I don't know, maybe it's because it's American, you've got TMZ there, and you got all that. But when it happens in football, I just find it really silly. I don't know why they talk about it. Fine, he didn't shake hands. Okay, move on.
Maybe the 2-2 score line wasn't good enough to they couldn't find much to talk about in the results. So maybe they just looked for off the field antics.
We also saw Chelsea 2-1 against Leicester. It was great seeing Hazard back on the pitch. He looked really good. I think the difference between him on the pitch and him off the pitch, it's automatically noticeable. He makes such a great impact. Kante, superb as usual. Bakayoko actually showed some glimpses of, what he might be capable of doing in the future. Again, like we said, I don't get it with the whole Matic thing, but he looked okay. Morata's proving to be, I don't know, maybe Drogba is passing on the torch to Morata. It took a while to find a replacement.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'll miss Diego Costa one bit.
I think Morata is sort of the same kind of player, but
More
I
of an
think he's-
aerial threat. Though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He has a couple of advantages over Diego Costa. I think he's more threatening aerially, and
Yeah.
I think that he can also open play a bit more than Diego Costa can.
Before we talk about the Man City versus Liverpool, there's one other game that I want to talk about because it's the Wenger in, Wenger out, debate that's been going on. Arsenal beat Bournemouth 3-0, and it's really funny. It cracks me up when I look at Arsenal and their supporters, because the way that their team is built and the way that I honestly feel that Wenger has lost the locker room, but they still have a lot of quality in that team. So it's always going to be up and down for them. I feel that when they win, it's going to be big wins. When they lose, it's going to be horrible losses. And when you tune into Arsenal fan TV, 1 week is going to be, it's a fantastic win, blood. And then the other week is going to be, he's got to go, fam. He's got to go. So it's going to keep happening week in and week out. I don't know. I mean, are you on the Wenger in, Wenger out camp? Which one are you in?
Honestly, it really depends on what the board has been instructing him to do during the transfer window. Because
right,
ever since we remember Wenger coming to Arsenal, it's never been a season where he oversplashes for players, and at one point he was competing with Man United on who's first and who's second every season, and then they just fell off that, and now they've become to be known as the
fourth place.
Yeah, exactly.
The fourth place finishers. Yeah. And that's where I have them finishing this year. I think people are overreacting to the losses that the way that they're so extreme, those losses that they're having, they look so bad that people are overreacting, but they're still going to win a lot of games during the season.
Yeah, but he got two really good players during the summer, Lacazette and Kolasinac. And last week he decided not to start either one.
Yeah.
So I think that was the
it was
main...
a questionable starting lineup.
Exactly. So, and this week Sanchez is not in the starting lineup. So I'm not really sure how Wenger is doing his rotation, but I think like a good start in a very competitive season where over £1 billion was spent on transfers. I think that a good start is gonna give you obviously the sleep
push that you need.
Yeah, and to try and kind of obviously compensate for what happened last season.
Right. Let's wrap up the Premier League roundup with obviously the biggest game of the weekend, which was Manchester City versus Liverpool. I don't know. Liverpool are going to great lengths to make Oxlade-Chamberlain feel at home, with a 5-0 loss. It's unbelievable. But I think the turning point in that game was obviously the red card.
Yeah, I mean, it happened pretty late in the first half. Yeah, they were 1-0 up, Man City.
And they were looking very good.
Either way, yeah.
See, I don't think that there was intention to harm the goalkeeper. I think Mane had his eye on the ball, but it's clearly a red card, whether he intended it or not. The boot was high. He kicked the guy in the face, injured him.
Starts showing.
Yeah, and one thing that kind of threw me off was how long Klopp spent complaining to the referee, even after knowing that the goalkeeper is actually injured. He actually got hurt. It wasn't acting. Mane as well stayed on the field forever before coming off. And while he was staying on the field, he didn't show any interest in finding out if the goalkeeper is doing okay. I mean, it was a bit of a weird vibe that I got from that whole scenario.
I don't really know what they were thinking exactly, but Mane has been the one of a few outstanding players for Liverpool this season so far. So I feel maybe that kind of shocked them a bit to think maybe if Mane left the pitch, then
they fell apart. They kind of dismantled after that.
Yeah.
But boy, De Bruyne and Aguero looked really good. Jesus looked really good.
Even Sane coming off the bench, scoring 2 in less than 15 minutes.
It just happened to be the week that I removed De Bruyne from my team, used my wild card, so I lost from a fantasy football perspective. But it was his performance was masterclass. You can say it was against 10 men, but still, he was showing that kind of quality before the sending off as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you gain an advantage in such a big game, then obviously you're gonna go just full on,
Right.
and that's what they did. So I think 5-0 is, especially against a team like such as Liverpool, where okay, the defense sort of does leak,
Yeah.
and then you have Mignolet with maybe I'll catch the ball, maybe not this time.
But that kind of loss could shake your confidence, especially that they have Liverpool has a Champions League game upcoming now against Sevilla, which is actually probably a good transition to the Champions League. But they need to suck it up and kind of recalibrate for that game, because Sevilla is no simple team either.
Definitely, I don't think they're going to be able to push over Sevilla. I think this is going to sort of put the team who's going to end up first in the group on kind of a huge advantage.
Right.
And I think the winner of that game is going to
decides who tops the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we go into a quick Champions League preview, Jurgen Klopp, overrated?
I don't think he is. I mean, he did wonders for Dortmund the few seasons that he was there. Yes, his statistics, maybe compared to Rodgers, isn't looking great.
Right.
I mean, there's something circulating in the social media since yesterday, I think.
Right.
That his win rate is actually lower than that of Rodgers. And the fact that current Liverpool supporters say that Klopp plays more offensive football, which makes him a better coach. In fact, Rodgers' team scored more goals than the current Klopp kind of team did.
Wow.
But then you need to keep in mind that if you're trying to be objective, you need to remember that Rodgers had Suarez.
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of a big name.
If you weren't a believer back then, you must be a believer now, right?
Yeah, and Sturridge was sort of fit during the Rodgers era, where I don't think he has played much under Klopp. So I think Klopp as a coach is very decent. I think they needed a quality center back. I don't think he had enough budget to spend on someone.
Yeah, it must be that, because it's not the whole Arsenal excuse where players don't want to go there because there's no Champions League. They are playing in the Champions League, so it must be the fees that he's been allocated to buy players, and also the direction the market is going in as well.
Exactly. So I believe maybe let's just in the case, just to kind of give a scenario, maybe he was allocated 30 to 40 million to spend on a defender. He couldn't get the player that he wants for that amount, and he decided, you know what, I'm better off just trying to survive the season yet again, qualify to the Champions League, and I'll try again next summer. I mean, Neymar sort of ruined the market.
He ruined everything, right? Yeah. So Liverpool Sevilla this midweek, who wins?
I would say Sevilla would win.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've got interesting games also, Feyenoord, Man City. Those are the Wednesday games. Tottenham versus Dortmund, which is two teams that are almost have the same kind of profile, the same kind of feel in their respective leagues. But the big game is my team versus yours, Juventus versus Barcelona.
Yeah.
My argument is that Barcelona will struggle this year. I don't think they top that group. Juventus, although they've lost Leonardo Bonucci, another thing that I don't understand, you sell your best defender to your rival and you make them stronger. Yeah. But I think Juventus wins this game. They're going to be playing away. It's in the new camp. I think Juventus shocks the world. I'm going for a 2-1 score. Who do you have?
I think it's going to be the other way around. I think Barca are going to struggle this season, especially in La Liga. In the sense, obviously, I'm talking about the direct game against Real, which sort of makes or breaks whoever kind of has the advantage to win the league. But I do believe that they will go far in the Champions League, maybe semi-final, like right. Last season. But no, I do think they're going to top the table. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Barcelona probably quarterfinals as far as they get this year. I think they get a kind of a humbling experience, and the fans will demand changes at the board level. That front office needs to figure things out. Or is it the back office? They need to figure things out. I don't know. I feel they struggle this year.
They will struggle. I mean, in a sense they would, but I don't think that is going to affect
the results on the
results that much.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, they're not going to compete on all fronts and outplay every single team that they play like they used to maybe 6 years ago. But I think that Dembele, despite not being Neymar,
Right.
I think he will prove to be an above average player, and he will be able to connect with Suarez and Messi well enough. And I think Semedo fills in the second problem that Barca have with the right back position.
Yeah.
I just think that the missing link is going to be that Xavi role that Rakitic is trying to.
Are you willing to put any money down on Karabakh beating Chelsea at Stamford Bridge this Tuesday?
I don't think so. I think that's a bit extreme.
In that group we also have Roma versus Atletico Madrid.
That's something.
That's going to be a good.
Yeah.
See, my prediction for that group, I had Atletico Madrid finishing first, Roma finishing second, and I have Chelsea missing out on the playoffs.
I think Atletico will top the group. I'm not sure if Roma will be able to. I mean, they did lose Rudiger to Chelsea.
Yeah,
and then obviously Totti retiring.
Right.
So I feel like Roma
Salah.
and Salah going to Liverpool. So I think Roma isn't the same team that was last year. Last year they were really solid. Maybe Chelsea will be able to edge them for the second place.
Interesting. I think next week we'll definitely go over these games. We're going to get an idea of how teams are going to perform for the year. It's the first game that comes in midweek. You've just had a weekend game. That whole squad rotation, the traveling, all of that will start to kick in. So I think we'll get a lot of information from that first week.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, with that, we're going to move on to international football. Now, it's one of these things, you know, the way that I see it, we had one weekend. And it's like those things in life that you have to get through, but you don't particularly enjoy. Waking up in the morning really early, sitting through team meetings at work, ironing your clothes, washing the dishes. You hate to do it, but you just have to get through it. When your missus takes you on a romantic comedy for a date, or in my case, it's usually book festivals and bookshops, but it's those kind of things. That's how international football feels like to me. It's especially when it happens on a weekend and you don't get any club football. It's just so, you just have to get through it. Now, yes, right now we're getting to the stage where people are qualifying and people are not qualifying, but still, you know, the usual candidates are getting there.
Especially if you're the team that you support, which is Spain and maybe Italy as a number two.
As a number two,
yeah. Especially when they don't really have much to play for except for first and second place, the way that the groups in Europe are formed. I think you have a point to make on that, but I think it's not really that competitive. So
see, FIFA have to change something about this qualification process. We're seeing international football lose its appeal a lot more when you compare it to club football. And part of that is because of the competitiveness of the games. I don't want to see a Spain versus Liechtenstein. It's also in terms of the number of teams that qualify from each continent. I think we've got 13 places for Europe, about 5 for Africa, 4 or 5 for Asia, 4 or 5 from South America, 3 or 4 from Central America, 0 to 1 for Oceania, you know, New Zealand or Australia. Have Australia joined?
No, Australia joined the
Asian qualification. Yeah. I don't know, and it's not consistent. So, for example, in Asia and Africa, you have a qualification round that's like a playoff format at the beginning, and if you lose, you're out. And then they form the groups, and then the group thing kind of plays out, and then you go through playoffs again. In Europe, you just go through groups right away, which I think is a bit of an unfair advantage. If you want these international teams to develop, they're going to have to get a lot of practice playing each other. So either you go with the playoff games at the beginning and root out all of these weak teams so we can have fewer groups with fewer teams that's more competitive, or you put it all in this, you know, the South American format, huge groups, everybody plays everybody. But then again, that comes at the expense of club football as well. So I don't know. There's a bit of a disjointed formation to the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the fact that a certain number of teams qualify from a certain continent, why is that the case? I mean, can you really compare Costa Rica, which is the, let's say, the third best team in Central America, versus the third best team in South America, which is, let's say, Colombia or Chile or...
I mean, when it comes to South America, only 5 teams qualify from South America.
Yeah, but I mean, they only have 10 teams anyways in the continent.
But then if you take teams like Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Chile, and Paraguay, and you put them up against England, I think all of these teams can thrash England in an international competition.
Yeah, that's more to do with the style of football. Yes, I agree. But I'm just saying, why should, say, New Zealand, you know, who has half a spot, let's say, because even if they win Oceania, they still need to play a qualifier. Why would you have to compare them to the 5th best place in South America? Why does it have to be in that sense? I mean, why does it have to be a regional sort of qualification process? Then again, you cannot really depend on the FIFA rankings either, because nobody understands those.
I don't get them.
Yeah.
I don't get them, just like I don't get financial fair play. Somebody needs to explain that to me. You know? All of these FIFA created
Probably
rules,
PSG could do the best to do that. So I agree that Europe is unfair in its system, especially when you don't even have even groups.
Right.
Like the groups are 6s or 7s or 5s.
It's not standard. I'm not claiming to have the answer here. I'm just saying that something is not right. You're seeing a lot of mismatches. I don't want to see a team beat another team 9-0 or 9-1. It's just at the expense of club football.
Yeah, and possible injury, and then the traveling, and
stuff.
yeah.
I've heard that also. I don't know if they're considering it or if it's been approved that the World Cup is going to become a 48-team tournament.
That was supposed to. That was, I think, up to debate to happen in Qatar, not in Russia. I think for the Russian qualifiers,
for the Russian one, of course, it's already set. But for the,
I think it's still up to debate. I don't think they made a final decision.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard. We're going to get those mismatches in the summer when it's supposed to, I mean, the hype of the World Cup, I think 32 teams is more than enough.
Definitely.
I find the European Championship more exciting because it's even fewer teams, it's 16, and Platini's trying to expand that as well.
But the idea, I think it's more to do with the economics of the tournament rather than the competitiveness of the teams. I mean, you're not really surprised to know the 4th place in every group in the World Cup.
Right.
Usually it's a
given.
Yeah, that's the 4th place team.
But interesting stuff now. So in the World Cup qualifiers, we could potentially have 4 continental champions not making it to the World Cup. So Cameroon, who won the African Cup, are out. I mean, there's no regrets there. They were absolutely an abject team. Chile are struggling. Australia is struggling. And things are not looking too assured for Portugal. And this is one of the things that don't make sense to me, because if we take Portugal, for example, and I'm being sarcastic here, they're in the group of death with the mighty Swiss and the mighty Hungarians, if you're looking back at 1954 Hungary. The unbeatable Andorra, Faroe Islands, don't even get me started. Portugal conceded a defeat in the first game against Switzerland in the first qualifying game. But then they won all 7 consecutive games after that. Yet they're not going to automatically qualify. So they have 21 points. If you look at other groups, Spain, who are topping their group, have 21 points. England has 20 points. France has 17. If Portugal were in Group A, they would be top, which is the France group, because France have 17 points. If they were in Group D, where Serbia has 18 points, they would be top. But because they're being clubbed with Switzerland, there's going to be a playoff spot. And we're seeing the same scenario play out with Spain and Italy, where Italy is going to most likely get the 2nd point. So imagine if in the playoff, you're getting Portugal versus Italy, and one of them gets to qualify to the World Cup. That is a terrible thing, because both of these teams have done enough comparing to other teams to qualify to the World Cup. And having them not there is going to hurt the tournament more than it would help it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's exactly the point that I was trying to make. Portugal, being the 2nd in their group, could not qualify, while, let's say, Peru finishes 5th in South America, and they get to qualify. So on what basis did Peru earn it? Playing against, Portugal didn't exactly have the... I mean, I know you were being sarcastic, but they didn't.
They lost 1 game.
Yeah. they didn't exactly have the worst campaign, but at the end of the day, it's just the luck of the draw, I guess.
With 6 teams in your group, it shouldn't come down to one game, or whether you qualify or you go to a playoff game. I mean, I don't
maybe
know.
they should look at the number of points at the end of the qualifiers and decide based off of that.
I don't know. It definitely needs to be revisited. England look interesting, but I think the one thing that I want to talk about in England is the goalkeeper situation. I think everybody in the world has realized, other than Gareth Southgate, that Joe Hart is probably not the best goalkeeper in England anymore.
If you watch the Man United Stoke game, you would realize that Butland should be there, no questions asked.
You've got Butland, you've got Pickford, you've got Forster, you've got Heaton, and between now and the World Cup, there's probably going to be a total of 8 games left for England between friendlies and, you know, whatever it is, warm-up games. And I don't think that that's enough time for them. You can't give 2 games to each goalkeeper and decide who gets to become the number one. If I was Gareth Southgate, automatically I drop Hart, and then I probably weed out the oldest 2 and give Pickford and Butland 4 games each and decide who goes top for the World Cup.
I think it's a personal conviction kind of situation. So he's convinced that Joe Hart is the best man for the goalkeeper position, and I think he's just gonna stick with it, despite it not being the most logical. I mean, Joe Hart is a player who was loaned out from Man City, to
Torino.
West Ham.
Oh, yeah. West Ham.
Torino last season.
Yeah.
And then this season, they didn't feel he was worthy enough, and they loaned him out again to West Ham.
I don't know.
And if you watch the first couple of games for West Ham, you would realize that he isn't exactly a top-notch goalkeeper anymore.
Was he ever? I don't know.
He did have a couple of good seasons.
A couple of good seasons,
yeah,
maybe.
He was really solid for a couple of seasons, especially when Man City won the league. But yeah, I think he fell off a while ago.
We also saw a very good game between Spain and Italy. And the one thing that I think struck me in that game was the technical skills on show. It was the
Isco show.
It was a whole different level. Even if you go from the defenders, they were comfortable on the ball. They were passing it calmly. Midfielders were asking for the ball in very tight positions. Isco, Asensio. As a Spain supporter, I'm excited again for that team. I'm excited to see what they'll do in the World Cup, because those 2 youngsters have emerged and kind of made an emphatic announcement, you know, that they're here. Very high quality football. There's a good David Villa. It was amazing to see him get a call up back to the national team. So you get that experience. I really hope he goes to the World Cup, because you need that, you know, senior citizenship kind of in the locker room, at least, if not on the field, to give those youngsters some guidance. So it was great to see David Villa there. Also, David Silva has been playing fantastic football. I saw an article, however, in The Guardian asking the question, because Silva scored a bunch of goals against Liechtenstein, I think. There was like 4, I don't know how many goals he scored. So he made it to the top 4 most goals of all time, the list of most goals of all time in the Spanish national team. So you've got David Villa at the top with 59. You've got Raul with 54, Fernando Torres with 38. And now we have with 33, David Silva. And I saw the Guardian ask the question in an article, is David Silva the greatest Spain player of all time?
Maybe top 10.
Maybe top 10, exactly. I like, hold your horses there. It's not just about, you know, the goals scored. There is, after all, 2 people by the name of Iniesta and Xavi that played. There is a Puyol that played for the Spanish national team.
Hierro.
We've got some legends
Morientes.
there. So let's calm down on that. But David Silva's looking really, really good. I'm not sure the bald hairstyle, well, the lack of hairstyle suits him, but he's looking really good this season. So that's when it comes to Europe. In Africa, we've seen that South Africa have to be probably the biggest chokers in African football right now. They're not going to qualify. Nigeria and Egypt, to me, are probably the best hopes in the World Cup for Africa. Not very sold on Ghana, on the Ivory Coast, and those used to be the usual suspects in the World Cup every year.
Yeah.
Burkina Faso, Senegal, whoever qualifies from there, I don't think does very well in the World Cup. So I think Nigeria and Egypt are looking really good. South America, and I know that you're going to have a lot to say in South America as an Argentina supporter. Brazil are rejuvenated.
Yeah.
They're back.
They look really solid. The thing about Brazil is that they have a really, really balanced team. I think that's the key thing. At one point, they had an all-attack team that didn't work. And then they had an all-defense team that didn't work. And I think right now they sort of found the right formula of, offensive players and defensive-minded players. And I mean, just looking at the standings, they have 37 points from 16 games. And then the second place is 10 points behind them.
Yeah. So it's total domination there.
And even when it comes to goals scored and conceded, they have 38 goals scored. And the second best team has 28. So again, 10 goal difference. And they have the best defense in 11 goals, and then Argentina in 15.
See, the favorites going into the World Cup have to be Germany, in my opinion.
Germany, Spain, on paper, France, and then Brazil.
I don't know. I think, in my opinion, it would be Germany on a whole different level. Do you think Brazil has enough to get revenge?
I think they do.
Really?
I mean, you're really rigging the coin when you decide that Germany are going to face Brazil at one point throughout the tournament, unless they meet in the final, obviously. But I think Brazil has a team that can go really far as winning the whole thing. You need to keep in mind that they have, a lot of experience in Marcelo and Diego Alves.
Right.
And then you have the youngsters in Jesus and in Neymar. And then Ederson isn't even making the Brazilian.
When you have that kind of depth, I mean, it's scary. Uruguay also look really good, but I think they're relying too much on Luis Suarez. Falcao looks excellent in Colombia as well.
Yeah,
I'm glad that he's back for them. But let's get to the meat of it all. What everybody's talking about, Argentina, because
1-1 Venezuela.
I saw that draw with Venezuela, and I mean, anyone who includes them as a World Cup favorite is throwing away money at this point. The way that they look. Yes, they have Messi, a reasonably good goalkeeper with Sergio Romero, couple of adequate center halves. You have Otamendi, Mascherano. They are getting older. One adequate midfielder, I guess. Di Maria, maybe Banega. You can include him there.
Yeah, the problem isn't. As ironic it might sound, the problem isn't in the defense. Although they don't exactly have world-class defenders. I
was working my way up because Di Maria, for example, for me is one of the most inconsistent players out there. He has so much quality, but it's very, very inconsistent.
He's very selfish. That's basically the main thing about him. They've scored 16 goals in 16 games. And that's Argentina. That's
tells you
Argentina.
Everything.
Yeah, and the problem, I think the main focal point is that it is Messi's Argentina. That's the main issue that they have. I mean, they got Sampaoli to come and
from Sevilla, right?
Yeah. And I have an interesting fact that he actually paid half his release clause to be able to coach Argentina. Yeah. So the guy must really, really want to prove something with Argentina.
I don't know if he's the kind of guy that can motivate them, because right now they're looking like a group of individuals that are wearing similar shirts. I don't see that team cohesion that we used to see from Argentina. It's a poor display from them so far.
That's the main issue is the individualism in the performance. The problem is they're not working well as a unit. There's no linking between the players. I mean, just think of having Dybala, Icardi, and Messi up front.
Right.
Think that Aguero and Higuain didn't even have enough space to be called up to the squad.
See, I don't get that. Is it a personal vendetta? Because I know previous managers had issues with certain players and they wouldn't call them up based on personal issues. Why on earth is Aguero and Higuain, who are playing for arguably the top teams in Europe, they're looking really good, they're scoring a lot of goals, why aren't they getting the call-ups?
From what I know, just kind of a personal opinion, maybe even, Higuain was sort of the boogeyman. You know, he's the one who messed up the opportunity to win the World Cup last time around.
Right.
So I think it's more of a fan pressure. The association in Argentina sort of have their own strings to pull. So Tevez, despite him being, you know, one of the best attackers in Argentina, let's say, he doesn't get called up. So that's more of an association kind of call to make. Agüero does really underperform for the national team, so I can understand that. Icardi really outperformed last season in Inter, so I understand his call. And like I said, like Higuain, I think it's more to appease the fans because of his showing in the Copa America and the last World Cup. I think that was the main issue with him. So they opted to go with Icardi, who can, I mean, play with the ball more. But the problem is you're facing someone such as Venezuela. Okay, Venezuela have 8 points from 16 games.
It's a respectable team. I still think they beat in England, like I said earlier. But, you know, when it comes to Argentina, a lot can change in 12 months. I think they have enough time to get it together. But it's just, it doesn't, that's if they qualify, that is. Yeah. But it just doesn't look too promising right now. And without these teams living up to expectation in the World Cup, it kind of takes away from it. We had that a few years ago or a few tournaments ago in the World Cup with France after winning it, like severely underperforming. It's not great for the fans. You want to see the top players get together, perform well, and face each other in the playoffs.
And I'm sure Argentina missing the World Cup the first time it would be since 1970.
Oh no, don't worry. I think FIFA will find a way of making sure that there is too much money there with the Messi's KFC ads. You know,
their last two games aren't really a struggle. They have Peru at home and Bolivia away. I don't think it's going to be a problem to win them. But then again, they couldn't outplay Venezuela. So
Chile, on the other hand, are running out of gas.
I think so. I think what made Chile the team that they are was the linking of the players together. And I think they're falling apart.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame. All right. I think that kind of wraps up the World Cup qualifiers. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show with a little bit of UFC. We had UFC 215 just happened this morning, actually, the morning of this recording. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and maybe wrap it up with some John Jones talk. Get your opinion on that.
You're listening to Sports Unhinged.
An interesting weekend we've had right now in UFC 215. Now, this event was supposed to have the main event between Mighty Mouse Johnson and Borg, but that got cancelled because Borg went down with some illness. Now, they keep saying that it's not related to the weight cut, but I think that's becoming an increasing problem in the UFC. Players getting ill, sometimes to a dangerous level because of weight cuts that they have right before the fight. Something needs to change in terms of the regulation there. But what ended up getting bumped up to the main event was a very anticipated fight between Amanda Nunes and Shevchenko. Now, we know that Nunes got the win in the first fight. Shevchenko was supposed to face her in the previous pay-per-view, but Nunes kind of pulled out last minute, claimed to be sick, although the doctors cleared her that day. Dana White promised or swore he would never have Amanda Nunes as a main event headliner anymore, but circumstances kind of worked out that she was. And the fight was technical. A lot of the, hardcore UFC MMA fans might have enjoyed it, but the general public were not too happy. I think the fans over there in Edmonton were chanting for the Oilers. They got so bored they started chanting for a team on a completely different sport. But it was quite an interesting fight. Before the fight started, I had Valentina taking Nunes to the deep waters, to the last round, maybe fourth, fifth round, where I thought Nunes would punch herself out and then Valentina would get the finish or she'd win on points. It almost happened that way, at least I thought so, until the judges' scorecards came up. And it was a split decision win for Amanda Nunes. And I can see why, especially when you're fighting a champion, judges tend to give the benefit of the doubt to the champion. You need to kind of decisively beat them for the judges to go the other way. But if you look at what happened, I thought that Nunes had 43% of her.
Yeah, 42% of her strikes were leg kicks.
And those leg kicks, in my opinion, had zero effect, especially those push side kicks that Nunes kept throwing. They were mainly utilized as a defensive tool to make Shevchenko reset before she could get off any shots. It gave Shevchenko kind of like a mild pink belly, but other than that, I didn't see what else that those kicks could have done to give Amanda Nunes any rounds. Nunes, what surprised me the most, though, is that Nunes landed so few head strikes, and she's supposed to be, the most dominant power puncher in the division. And you could literally count how many of these power punches she had on one hand every round. There wasn't that many. Nothing stunned Shevchenko, not even pushed her back. And almost everything Valentina threw on the other side, there were power punches. They landed. So, I don't know. When you land that many clean shots on the champion, just because, you had some takedowns, and even in those takedowns, especially the one in the 5th round, Shevchenko was throwing elbows from the bottom that were connecting. Nunes didn't do much with those takedowns. So as a judge, I don't see how you give it to Nunes. I thought Shevchenko should have won that in a unanimous, close decision. Yeah, 48-47, but it should have been across the board. The one thing for Shevchenko, however, is I wish that she opened up a little faster. She kind of threw away that first round for free. Nobody really did anything, and they gave it to Amanda Nunes. But I honestly felt as the fight went along that Shevchenko was pulling away. But then it comes back to not doing enough. I mean, you shouldn't leave it to the judges' scorecard in a championship fight.
It reminds me of the Stephen Thompson versus Woodley fight.
Yeah.
Which was very unconvincing how Woodley managed to hold on to his title.
Right.
He didn't really do much.
I think Dana White gave him too much of flack for that, especially, actually, no, it was the Woodley Maya.
Yeah, that was
really
even worse, because Maya at least was on the offensive throughout.
But hey, hold on. You have a guy in Maya that clunks onto you like a backpack, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm Woodley,
shake him off somehow.
No, I wouldn't put myself in a position where he gets on me. So that's why Woodley was very conservative with his punching, because he didn't want to get close enough for Maya to get that clinch. Because if it goes to the ground or if he's on your back, it's over. That guy's one of the best submission artists, wrestlers, grapplers in the game.
Yeah.
So I think Dana White gave him a lot of flack. Now, don't get me wrong. Woodley's a guy that has his flaws too, especially with the whole everybody's racist against me. I'm the black champion. I don't get... John Jones is a black champion. Demetrius Johnson is a black champion. We've had a fantastic lineup of black fighters that did great. There was never a racism thing going on in the UFC. But going back to this fight, I get it. If you're a judge, you need to see a convincing performance from the contender to give it, especially in a close fight, to give it the other way or to take the belt away. But I felt that Shevchenko won that fight very clearly. I'm a bit sad for her, but I don't think she'll be heartbroken because she did an excellent job. She could convince Dana White to give her that third fight against Nunes eventually, I feel.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, especially with Home looking to go up to Cyborg's
to fight
weight
Cyborg.
class.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's gonna be something to look forward to. And I think with Home gone, I don't think there's much competition. And
something. I don't want that for Holly Holm either. The last time when we saw the Avenger, I think Avenger versus Cyborg, it reminded me of Jurassic Park. That scene when they take the goat or is it a goat or a cow? And they drop it to the T-Rex to eat. That's exactly what it looked like. Cyborg, so much steroids in her lifetime. She's got a face only a mother can love right now.
Yeah, somehow USADA hasn't found anything
I
wrong
don't know.
in Cyborg's tests.
Speaking of that, John Jones, what do you think? I mean, the story floating around about him passing the blood test on the day of the fight.
Yeah, I first of all, I don't subscribe to the pound for pound best
All
ever
time?
fighter.
You don't?
Yeah, I don't think he is.
I think he made the case when he was beating everybody and everybody at their prime. I think he had.
What has he done that Cormier hasn't done? Besides, obviously, beating Cormier.
Right. Well, Cormier was going through people as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he is eye-pokingly good.
Right.
You know,
I think his physical appearance alone, or these physical specifications, if you can call them that, give him an advantage over anybody in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, I think he needs to move to heavyweight, if anything. And that's where he could prove to be the best pound for pound fighter.
Well,
I don't think
the way things are going now, he's not moving anywhere. Yeah.
So he can move to Bellator and do whatever he wants to do, whether it's
a lot less regulated over there.
Yeah.
Now see, the story that was floating around about him passing the blood test on the day of the fight, that kind of got on my nerves. You could tell that that story got pushed to the media by the John Jones camp. The drug that he was tested for is not something that gets detected through a blood test.
It's through urine.
It's through a urine test.
Basically.
So, I don't know. Last week I said I'm going to hold back and see the facts and how they come out. But increasingly, it's not looking good for him. It looks like he tried to take a steroid that gets out of your system quickly to gain an advantage. Although it still doesn't make sense. Things don't add up because he had it on the day of the fight or the day before. That's not enough time for the steroid to actually take effect.
No, but what I heard is the drug that he took can actually go out of your system in 2 to 3 hours. So it's very short.
It goes out of your system, but you need to take it for a long period of time for it to actually become a performance enhancer. It just doesn't make sense. And he's had a great career. One of the best MMA fighters, I think, in my opinion, to ever step into the octagon. Just the different weapons that he has. But he had to cheat. And the evidence increasingly is suggesting that he's a guy that's been dirty all along. He's just been able to conceal it.
Yeah, historically, he has done it before, whether contaminated drugs or not, you know. I mean, he claimed that what he took wasn't meant to give him a physical advantage, and yet somehow it did.
I kind of feel cheated by him, you know. It's a similar thing to Tiger Woods, you know.
Yeah,
came out with a certain image, the family man. Similar here with John Jones. He came into the MMA scene pretending to be a good Christian.
Exactly.
You know, he's a role model. Meanwhile, it's been hookers and cocaine and crashing Bentleys and poking people in the eye during fights. That is honestly one of the reasons why I thought Shevchenko should have won that fight decisively, is because of the rule that was not enforced. Nunes was having her fingers open, almost poking Shevchenko's eye the whole fight. Didn't get warned about it. She got warned about it, but they didn't deduct any points, because that's a new rule that they implemented now in the UFC. You cannot kind of try to block with an open hand.
Fist, yeah.
Yeah. So John Jones is known for doing that. I mean, he's been doing that for a long time. But again, it's the cocaine, it's the crashing the cars, it's he kept messing up, and his true colors came out. I mean, John Jones has always been a guy that wanted to play football because 2 of his brothers are in the NFL, but he was never big enough to become a football player. So he kind of found his sanctuary in MMA, and he was bloody good at it. It's a shame that he kind of wasted it away. I don't know. He's the Eddie Guerrero of this era, I guess, if you're comparing the UFC to the WWE.
Yeah.
Just a bad guy, but the bad guy that a lot of people like to love, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who still support him, and they think that he didn't actually.
See, I took a very neutral stand the last time I talked about this. I decided to kind of see where it goes, because I'm a fan of John Jones. During that build-up week, And when he finally got into the octagon and was watching the event, although I like Cormier a lot, I wanted him to beat Cormier because Cormier is at an age right now where he's going to retire any minute, right? We wanted somebody with that kind of electric performance to keep things going at the light heavyweight championship. So when I heard about this, it just didn't make sense. It still doesn't. You know, I'm not making my final judgment on John Jones, but it's truly a shame that it's coming down to this. And what the hell is taking USADA so long to announce the results of the B sample? It's a urine sample.
That doesn't make sense either.
Why would you test the A sample, leak the information before the whole process is complete, and not conclude it? I don't get it. Something doesn't add up. But either way, I don't think John Jones comes out of this looking clean. Even if he's proven innocent and he gets back into the octagon, he's always going to have that question mark around him.
One way to look at it is maybe USADA made a mistake with the first sample, and that's
They've done
why
that before.
And maybe that's why they're holding on to the news about the second sample for so long. Maybe they're just trying every single way to find.
Well, they did that with Cyborg. Although, I mean, they did the A sample came out contaminated, the B sample was clean, and they cleared her off. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Only time will tell, I guess.
Only time will tell. Anyways, it's been great having you on the show. We should do this definitely more often. A lot of insights from the football world. I'm going to defer to you as my researcher from now on, if that's okay. If you're not on, you're giving me the cheat notes for the podcast. Thanks to all our listeners. It's been a great episode. We have a lot of sports coming up next week. Champions League, Premier League never disappoints. And we've got the big one, Canelo versus Triple G. I keep closing the show talking about Canelo versus Triple G, but I'm not going to talk about it until that weekend. Forget Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. This is the fight.
This is a real fight.
This is the one I've been wanting to see, and I still haven't made my mind up on who's going to win. But it's definitely one that we'll be looking out for. Thanks again, Tariq. Thanks to all the listeners, and we hope to see you again next week. Take care.